I go back to at Cadre, but my work in both in the legislature and in the community has really been about strengthening, building power for working class people, bringing together workers and business owners, take on corporate control and corruption, championing legislation like abolishing the tip minimum wage, increasing minimum wage to $20 an hour. DCFC, REAP have been integral in our Healthy School Meals for All coalition, which is legislation that we introduced, we've been 2020 now.
Yeah.
And because I'm in the minority party in the state legislature, we've really focused on really trying to share a vision for Wisconsin where we've got healthy communities, where farmers are feeding people again, our kids are in schools with that are fully funded, our educators are paid well, and that people recognize how connected we are both through food systems, but that communities trying to take care of one another. Healthy school meals for all, paid leave for all, universal childcare, protecting natural resources, taking on data centers, and building a public option for fair, cheaper healthcare. Those are some of the cornerstones and platform our agenda. And I'm here in my state legislative capacity, so can discuss legislation, organizing work that we've been doing around both DCFC and the Healthy School Meals for All Coalition. I've been in good conversations with folks from the Farmers Union and our friends up at GROW, which is the my goodness. It's a Western Wisconsin organizing group. A lot of folks doing work up there with CAFOs and taking on big ag and organizing around protecting communities from growing presence of ice. So service industry worker, organizer, and George is around the corner. I'm a very proud single mom as well. So excited to be here to learn from you all and discuss some solutions and what a vision for healthy food systems for everyone across the state could look like.
Thanks, Fred. I can introduce myself quickly. I'm Noah Bladorn. I'm the executive director of REAP Food Group and helped found DCFC along with Fran and some other folks. Megan as well was one of the OGs, Alex too. Yeah, and then we'll just go around and introduce ourselves. Pete, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yes, I'm Violetta. I'm currently working on my master's in agroecology at UW-Madison. And through that, I found a passion in edible landscapes and really wanting to see more edible landscapes in Madison. I'm from Madison and just see the potential of reconnecting people with land and food through growing food more locally and building resilient ecosystems, but also strengthening our food systems.
Patrick, well, then we'll just go down the front row and snake through.
Patrick Randolph. I'm opening Granddad's Farm Stop in Madison, Wisconsin in August. It's a hybrid farmers market grocery store with a mission to get farmers and food producers closer to market price so that they're not leaving money on the table.
Yeah. I'm Jessica Souza. I am Wonder Farm. I raise pigs on pasture, some laying hens and some ducks in the mornings. I work part-time as a high school math teacher in the afternoons. And drive my teenagers around. And then chauffeur most professionally at this point, but with no pay. Then sit on REAP's board, recently added to Meatsmith Co-op's board, which is a meat processor opening up in Mount Horeb, hopefully this summer. It's a cooperative. And I'm the vice president of Dane County Farmers Union. So connected with Farmers Union in a big way, and I've done a lot in the last year around the loss of LFPA and similar programs, because that was my main market about a year ago. And it's been a rough year trying to figure out how to be a farmer in the face of that loss. So glad folks like Patrick are doing big work in terms of making some markets for farmers like me. But Yeah, glad to meet you.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, I'm Megan Stern. I am the interim executive director for Dane by Local. I'm also on the board for MadWork, which is Madison worker-owned cooperatives. And a couple other things, but I'm super passionate about, I show up in these spaces for our businesses who do not have the capacity and the time to do everything. So we try to represent them through Dane by Local. And food systems is DCFC is a really good alignment because we have a lot of food systems people. And if we just dedicated our time to just that, we would never get to the other industries because that is such a high need compared to others. So we also work on education. But I just got back from, not just in January, back to work full time after having cancer, and I have like a renewed energy, and I'm finally back to get into outreach stuff again.
Okay.
Which I'm very excited about, and we are really engaged at a national level. So if there are things that your personal business or you have thoughts on, and like Fran is wonderful, Francesca is wonderful, maybe you can't get a hold of her, always feel free to reach out. There's a lot going on right now at a national level for monopolies. I sent some of you an email, there's like a potential, there's like a, I think it's called the Murphy law, I have to read it, right? But it's dropping fish farms into the ocean, will put our local businesses out of business. Lots of stuff like that going on, and Wisconsin is co-signed on a federal case against Amazon. We were one of the 18 that are co-signed on it, so any of that stuff, if you're curious, please reach out. We're here to support businesses through this stuff at on local and national level.
My name is Felipe St. Martin. I'm the culinary director at Holy Monastery, also the CDC. Also, we're trying to pass a law together with climate change. They're not interested. And the collaboration with Francesca Home is, I always flex when I try to flex that. The name of the law is Wisconsin Food Rescue Act. We have a website you can check, is WI foodrescueact.org. We're gonna talk about that. So, yeah.
Yeah, my name is Jessica Hannibare. I'm a co-lead of Madison Climate Change Makers with Catherine, who sits right next to me. I am a software developer at Epic, but that has nothing to do with why I'm here. I didn't really intend to end up at Epic. My real passion is in sustainability and climate change work, and so leading Climate Change Makers Madison has been a big part of my life for the past year and a half-ish, something like that. And yeah, as Felipe just alluded to, we have been working on the Wisconsin Food Waste or Food Rescue Act and trying to pull together a coalition of folks to show strong support for that. And we've been meeting with a bunch of different legislators, and hopefully the next stage is putting out an open letter and getting folks to sign on to it to show that there's broad support for it, and then hoping to introduce it in the next legislative session.
Yeah, I'm Catherine. I am a co-lead for Madison Climate Change Makers, which I don't know if you said, but it's
Oh yeah, I didn't really explain what that is.
it's a nonprofit that tries to make it as easy as possible for people who care about climate change to take meaningful political action. So we host hours of action where people can just show up, and we do something like write to legislators or submit letters to the editor, post public comments, things like that. So sort of building community and taking action around a hard topic. I also volunteer with Zero Waste Madison, and I work in nonprofits, and I'm working on the Wisconsin Food Waste or Food Rescue Act, which is how I initially found this group.
My name's David. I'm a software engineer at Google, and I'm a volunteer at Climate Change Makers. And I also volunteer for Dane County Parks. So like my passion for the environment is very much there. And before that, I used to just like pick up trash at like random parks.
That's awesome.
So
We can go back there, and then just in the interest of time, if we can keep it to maybe like a couple sentences each. You can go next. Yep. You can. Go ahead.
Name's Gene. I am a community organizer, largely around visual aid these days. Also building some power across the state, but some resistance work. Around food, the most recent adjacent thing is trying to partner with the founders of the Madison Grocery Share that try to provide recipe peer-to-peer mutual aid stuff, we can provide that and get that in a sustainable format. So we might be looking for more technical people. But yeah, there's a library of things that we're co-creating right now with Madison. We have a mutual aid fund that we do distributions from. We write mutual aid. Food is essential to our health and well-being. So
Is
my
that,
dad was a grocery.
Is that the Madison Lots website? I've seen a website for a library of things that popped up very recently.
Cool. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, it's in beta test right now.
I think I've met one of your collaborators.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kelsey. I'm also involved in some of the same mutual aid work, but I'm also a professional food systems consultant, value chain coordinator consultant, and I work for a couple of jobs. The other job is doing volunteer coordination for emergency food systems work at the Madison Area Food Pantry Gardens. New swag, very excited. So they grow produce that all gets donated to the pantries, we have costs to the pantries, so. Yeah, work at different levels of the value chain, have been loosely associated with DCFC for about 2 years. And recent new addition to the REAP board. Yeah, that's me.
My name is James. I'm a freelance cartographer and UW Madison master's student in cartography. I am a local or a recent transplant, and I'm interested in getting involved.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm Ben Stanger. I'm the founder of Green Box Compost. Except food scraps and very dirt.
I'm Alex. I work for a nonprofit Urban Triage. We do a lot of agriculture work, so.
Hi, I'm Vishala. I'm a medical anthropologist by training with a background in medicine. I'm currently a scientist at UW with a very deep-seated interest in food equity and farm to schools and making sure everyone gets fed because we've got enough food. I'm also a recent board member like Kelsey.
Yes, nice.
Hi, I'm Abby. I'm a server at the Weary Traveler down in Willie. I work at the Vitruvian Farms, especially like farms, food, community. Oh, also I'm an intern at Brain Plate Grows. Intern of the month, I think.
Of the century.
I'm Elliot Gilfillan. I'm one of the lead organizers at Brain Plate Grows, and we do composting and growing food, and really interested in the sovereignty of food creation and taking care of the planet, and having that reciprocal thing and creating a action-based community for people to plug into.
And local hailstorm. Linda, do you want to go next?
Hello, my name is Grace Crusoe, affiliated with the Laird Onion. Linda invited me to come and listen to the conversation, so thanks for letting me join you guys.
Edward Smith, also at the Laird Onion, but I got a degree, my master's in sustainability. And then getting my law degree right now at UW because I saw that the legal systems are no longer serving the people that they're meant to be serving.
My name's Catherine Howley. I'm developing a historic train depot down in Belleville, which is just off the PO line, along the Badger State Trail, into a family-friendly food park with a shared kitchen space and some containers fitted out for food operators and a playground, which is my favorite part. And so I'm kind of slowly getting stitched into the scene here and, you know, just shared kitchen and seeing what we can do with it, really. So I'm mostly here to listen and meet folks.
Thanks, Catherine. We'll go online. Delaney, do you want to get us started?
Yeah. Hey everyone, I'm Delaney Gapster. I work with Dane County, and I'm our organics recycling program coordinator. So I manage our food scrap stop programs for free resident drop off or access to compost resources. I also work very closely with a number of restaurants, food pantries, what have you, for consulting, connecting them to compost resources, food for donation to food pantries. Um, yeah. That's me.
Thanks, Delaney. Chris, do you want to go next?
Hey everybody. Hey, I'm Chris Lewis. I'm a UW PhD student in the environment program, the Nelson Institute, focused on agriculture and climate change.
Thank you, Chris. Helen? If you can. If not, we'll go to Sam.
Hey everyone, I'm Sam Shea. I use they and he pronouns. Sorry, I just saw a beaver swim under me. I'm on a walk, so that's pretty magical. I live at Wonder Farm, so sometimes I take walks with Jess to see the beavers. But I currently work at Fair Share CSA Coalition as the Organic Vegetable Farm Manager Apprenticeship Program. And yeah, I manage that program. And then I've worked on organic vegetable farms and have run a very small CSA. So currently, my task is growing pathways for new and beginning farmers through our apprenticeship program and working kind of in the labor sector in that way. Thanks for letting me join virtually.
Thanks, Sam. Catherine, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you. My name's Catherine Hurley. Excited to be joining virtually. Thank you for the option. Um, I work at Extension as a statewide outreach specialist with the topic of farm to institution, so developing local food supply chains, trying to make the market an easier place for local suppliers to make a living in. And super exciting to hear everyone's passion. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. I can read. It seems like Katie said she couldn't turn her mic on, but her and her husband started a beef farming operation near Belleville about 2 years ago. Patrick, do you want to go next?
Hey everybody, hopefully you can hear me. I'm coming from Arizona here. But I'm Patrick Lyman. Recently on the board of REAP Food Group. Can you guys hear me? I see Noah laughing at me right now.
You have sunglasses on, but it looks like a forest.
It's a lot earlier here. But yeah, on the board of REAP Food Group, and also on the board of Taste of Hope Madison. And then most recently, the now officially full-time founder and CEO of Maze. We're really excited to be. Oh, hey, and this is Harlow, my daughter.
Hi, Harlow.
We're meeting about food systems, kiddo. And Maze is a social marketplace for farmers and chefs to connect, move more local food and make local food the easy thing. We had our launch of our flagship product on May 1st, and we're extremely excited to try and help all of these wonderful people in this room revolutionize local food.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much for contributing. I feel like it's so important and central to DCFC to just for us all to introduce ourselves and see all the people power in our community related to food systems and how much we can get done when we work together and collaborate. So I really appreciate that. I think just in the interest of time, I'm going to try to speed run through the food policy presentation so we can get to questions and answers because y'all came for friend. So I want to honor that.
And each other.
And each other. That's true. It's been good community today. Yeah, exactly. So if you're new here, the Dane County Food Action Plan is a project that's been going on for the last couple of years. It's sort of centered around three phases: a literature review that sort of looked into all the data and reports that exist around food systems here locally and really understanding what we know about our local food system. last year was centered around community engagement. We held over 63 events across 15 different municipalities and gathered information from over 3,000 people throughout the county to inform what we want our food system to look like. And currently we're in the analysis and report writing phase of the food action plan. So we're both giving summaries of what we learned throughout the process and giving like an overview of the state of our food system, and then also ending with a sort of goals, strategies, and recommendations policy document at the end of that. So today is a little bit about what we learned from this process and how it can help inform local and state policy. The thing that we kind of hit over the head is throughout this process, we learned that our food system is broken. We see a drastic rise in food insecurity, specifically here in Dane County, but I know that's happening across the state and it's happening across the country as well right now. We think food insecurity sort of in the last half a year has risen to as high as around 15% in our community, which is drastically higher than what is sort of accepted as normal in our community. And in the midst of COVID, when we had all this funding to help support food security efforts, we had universal school meals, we had all this money flowing into our emergency food system, we got food insecurity down to 6% in our community. So we're seeing over a doubling of that insecurity in our community. We're also seeing a drastic rise in consolidation across all sectors of the food system. So we're seeing less community control over our farmland, our grocery stores, our restaurants, name a business in the food system, and we're seeing the nationalization, the corporatization of those businesses and less community control, which often results in we're getting less options as a community over what we have available to us to eat. And we're also seeing, especially in the retail sector, and I know there's a couple people with lineage of grocery store owners in this room. What we see is when consolidation happens over time, the price of food rises as well, and that's what's leading to this insecurity. We also have a lot of people dedicated to food waste in this room, and we live in this system where we have this great disparity in who has access to food, and we also waste a ton of food. The largest contributor to the landfill, and Delaney always correct me if I'm wrong, but is organic matter, and the largest portion of that organic matter is poundage that comes from food and food systems. So we want to work together with different organizations to find better ways to manage that food resource, whether that's creating compost, feeding hungry people, feeding animals, etc. And then we're also seeing that demand is not meeting supply. So we have all these institutions throughout our community that say and have set aside budgets for local food that cannot fulfill that demand with the local supply. And often the big problem there has been centered around infrastructure. We don't have the processing infrastructure, the storage, the distribution infrastructure to make that supply possible for that scale of demand. And then interesting conversations are happening right now where we've invested a lot of community dollars into that infrastructure. And now we're saying, can we meet the production to meet the infrastructure that we're starting to build out? So those are sort of the overviews of what we learned. And through that, we created 7 goals coming out of the food plan that we want to see. And I'll just break those down really quickly. So our first goal and our overarching goal is to create a more interconnected local food system by building social infrastructure that increases and fosters opportunities for collaboration. You're looking at one of those projects. It's all about getting people who are doing the work together in a room to talk about systems change, to create opportunities for collaboration. So we don't have to stress so much for resources as individuals, but can collectively act to meet our goals as a community. Goal number 2 is increase production of food in Dane County, prioritizing the needs of local consumers. And then in this, the rest of the goals sort of have these statewide policy supports. So in the past, this has looked like DATCAP programs like Buy Local, Buy Wisconsin, a new grant that sort of, I don't want to say replaced LFPA, but has sort of brought back the spirit of LFPA's, the Wisconsin Food Security and Food Products Grant, which sets aside $10 million in the biennium, statewide biennium budget for emergency food systems, hunger task force, and Feeding Wisconsin to purchase local food to fill pantry shelves. These sort of projects really create a market for local farmers and get hungry people good, local, nutritious food. And there's also spotlights that we put in here that are efforts that are going on right now to increase these efforts. And the spotlight here is Hunger Task Forces calling for a 30 million per biennium for local sourcing to sort of boost or expand that Wisconsin food security and food products grant. Our third goal is centered around access. So increase the access to affordable, healthy, and culturally relevant food. Previous support has looked like the Wisconsin Food Security and Food Products Grants, which we just talked about. And past examples that no longer exist are the Local Food for Schools program and Healthy School Meals for All, which Fran has been a leader on for the last 6 years. Goal number 4 is centered around infrastructure, increase regional food system capacity for storage, processing, and distribution. Previous policy support has looked like the meat processor infrastructure grants. I wonder if Meat Smith Co-op maybe received some of that funding. Also, the Regional Food Systems Infrastructure Grant, which funded projects like the Food Shed, which is happening through CAC and really increasing the amount of processing, storage, and distribution capacity of our community. And wanting to spotlight investing in RFSI-like programs that really spur that infrastructure in our communities. Goal number 5 is enhance community resource management by reducing waste and improving recovery efforts. Statewide policy support currently looks like the DNR has set aside food waste goals that kind of give us goals to strive for as it relates to food waste, but there is a real lack of funding and infrastructure and support for actually doing that work in the community. Wanted to spotlight the effort that you all are talking about, the Wisconsin Food Rescue Act, and also in the state legislature, there are food waste reduction grants that have been brought up on the floor. Goal 6 is centered around resilience, increase the preparedness for chronic and emergent food system challenges. Here, again, spotlighting RFSI as an ability to invest in the infrastructure of our local community to deal with these emergencies, whether that's things like the uncertainty of SNAP in the future and how that relates to how our community accesses food, or things that are more immediate like weather disasters that shut down supply chains, pandemics, things like that, that really create an immediate need for food security. Also wanted to spotlight subsidies for local food sourcing, food nutrition education, which has been cut, federal funding has been cut for that, and investments in infrastructure. And again, I just want to spotlight this. Food nutrition education is really about providing education to the community about what resources exist for them to help access food and helping them actually tap into those resources that do currently exist. And lastly, and this goal was really inspired by work done at DCFC over the last 4 years, is increase opportunities for sustainable food system careers. Here I'm really spotlighting work that Main Street Alliance has led on that is really at this more meta level of we need better social safety nets to provide essential services, healthcare, childcare, housing, and workforce development to make working, on farms, working in restaurants, working in food system more sustainable long term. So I think that's all I have in terms of a presentation. Kind of a speed run. Thank you guys. Any immediate questions or anything people want to go up here?
I'm gonna grab my phone because I do need to take notes. So
Cool.
I'll be right back.
Yeah. Any queue of questions people want to ask while Fran's getting ready? Yeah.
I was just curious about the social infrastructure, and sometimes we sort of like networks and whatnot, but we still remain relatively siloed.
Yeah.
Just give any commentary on just making bigger silos.
I think like that's where DCFC came out of, was just creating a space where we could all gather. And I think spaces like that are really important. I think I serve on the Madison Food Policy Council as well. And I find like the more bureaucratic, government centric councils can be not great for spurring action. And so from my perspective, I think it's all about community organizing. And I think Megan's been a big advocate for that. And Fran obviously has been too. It's just like, I think we see how stretched thin we all are and what can we do to consolidate what we're doing. The question was around social infrastructure and just our thoughts about how we can build, I think, collective action.
Well, this counts as that for sure. And I think it's important to be in mindset around this being part of resilience and community defense as well. Going to be that person and argue that I like to think of systems right now as working as designed. And that encourages and motivates me to think about building something new. Because the systems that have been in place have made us unhealthier. They have made it so that our children and we are worried about our shared future. And so community organizing, I think, going in with the mindset of revolution, that I can switch off from being very overwhelmed by just the existential crisis of our world right now, into remembering that community organizing is part of that broader resistance. And it's hard. Community organizing at its core is relationship building, and relationship building, especially right now, is difficult. We have a crisis of connection, and it's just when you're in a shared struggle, it's often harder to try to find shared solutions. But creating spaces like this and not having just the agenda around a direct action, but also having spaces for socializing. I think socializing and having, is part of that social infrastructure. And then it's the advocacy part for elected officials, once they're elected, but also getting people elected who share our values and think like an organizer. And again, I'm in my state assembly capacity here, so we're not talking about the things I'm doing outside of that, but it's, community organizing can look like a lot of different things, but if we remember right now that it's about relationship building, I think that will help grow, help people get into a shared mindset of growing community, really. And I think this was like, but we, because the state has been under a Republican rule where privatization is the goal, where they're trying to make government dysfunctional. And then we're seeing public dollars not going to actually serve the public. So that has created a sense of not only scarcity within our agencies like DNR and DACCAP, but this like scared to get into trouble, right? So then we're not fostering innovation and creativity or thinking about collaboration because everyone just wants to make sure they're not getting punished by the Republicans. So that's where community can really lead in breaking down those silos, investing in mutual aid and thinking about not just shared resources in terms of funding, but how can we utilize people's different backgrounds and talents and skills into one shared goal, which here is healthier food systems, and breaking that down into what that looks like based on what our the study has shown. And I think that especially when it comes to food systems, making it as diverse and inclusive as possible. So just like here where we have representation from small business to design to, I love maps, so our cartographer friend, thank you for being here. That growing this is part of strengthening community organizing. And I think it's our responsibility to show the state and how agencies work that we have to do this when systems fail, neighbors show up. And sometimes it can just be one goal. I think that's why I've stayed as hyper focused on healthy school meals for all as I can. But if it starts to feel kind of overwhelming in terms of there is so much shit that is wrong and so much to burn down and rebuild. But that can also be exciting knowing that we don't ever want to come back to this, right? So we know what not to do. Yeah, so individually, maybe it's having one set goal on a set policy, on an organizing framework that we're utilizing people's skills and thinking about contributing beyond funding and time, but also skill sharing and then to be really consistent. So have like showing up monthly for DCFC and being consistent in that, that is part of like, that is a really big contribution, I think, or to be that person that's taking notes and making sure that we're growing and sharing what happened. I kind of just went up, so I think I can actually answer.
I
Yeah.
do have a question actually. I think one of the big problems that we hear right now, living in this world we live in, is lobbying, right? How like money in lobbying kind of like takes over all the rights we have, you know? So I wonder what your position on that and what can you, I mean, we're also trying to pass this law.
Yeah.
Which is now we're thinking a lot about this, you know, and trying to get the church involved and stuff, you know? So like, do you ever see the lobby industry losing any power or any laws that could keep money away from lobbying, or maybe any laws that could say that lobbying can like individuals, I don't know, that couldn't at least manage money in lobbying somehow, you know? Yeah.
Well,
If you find that question
we definitely need big money out of politics. We have to change the makeup of our state legislature. The state legislature has a lot of power right now, and it's, you know, majority Republican. I'm sure you found with your lobbying efforts. So the action plan is to ensure that we have a Democratic majority in the Assembly and the Senate. And this is the year that we can do that. We need to gain 5 seats in the Assembly and 2 seats in the state Senate. And I'll have a map available soon of which districts to target. So if you want to go out there and knock doors and help a candidate flip a seat from Republican to Democrat, want to help direct funds to those campaigns. But that, you know, this is, that majority is in play. And I think we end Citizens United, but that's going to happen at the federal level. And here in the state, you know, lobbying also can and should be funded for lobbying, there are lobbyists for Wisconsin conservation voters. There are registered lobbyists for people working in the climate space, or for, you know, Farmers Union, I believe, has a registered lobbyist as well. So we have to challenge the lobby for harmful legislation and only corporate interests and profiteers with lobbying for organizations and programs and that are, you know, that are for good, that are to help strengthen community and make them healthier. So I like to think of it as like, we gotta get in the game. And we have to change who the players are in the legislature. And then, you know, even with the Democratic majority, it is then a fight for prioritizing food systems work. And that is going to come with strengthened numbers and strengthen numbers as well as diversifying that coalition. When we lobbied for an education bill to include Asian American history in public schools, it was very important that the people that came to testify on this bill were not the folks that were traditionally or who people thought would support this bill, right? So small business owners and other local elected officials, people who aren't associated necessarily with Asian folks or to public schools. And to make a stronger case for your for the bill that you're lobbying by bringing in how there's a collective impact, and bringing in folks who people wouldn't think would be supportive and bringing in that perspective. So organizing to build power for the Democratic majority in the legislature, building lobbying and more registered lobbyists who are working in community with organizations that are prioritizing food systems work. And then, that organizing in the community matters too. And sometimes it comes down to straight shaming politicians. But those action steps, I think, building, always bringing organizing into that, thinking of the lobbying of the good guys, good people is organizing. And yes, the money, I'm not going to sugarcoat them, the money that goes into lobbying. I was just at a meeting with a lobbyist who we were talking about the building trades and data centers, and they had a big sign for the Wisconsin Tavern Lake, which is not a great coalition. But they hire lobbyists to act in their interest, and I don't think we should shy away from that, because not only then do we have a lobbyist who is in there doing good advocacy work directly with legislators, that frees up outside action, whether it's doing a campaign around the legislation in the community, getting press, making sure that we're showing up not just with I call it showing, not just telling. I think it was pink pussy hat things in 2016 after Trump got elected. Like that, it's it still made a statement, though I think it was kind of controversial, but like people remember those. So there's a lot of different ways to lobby and to think about how we take on the lobby for policies that do not serve the public, challenging that with lobbying for things that do benefit the public, and making that as community oriented as possible. This is where I think DCFC, y'all can build a lot of power in the next 6, 7, 8 months, because we have a short window to show that this is about the many and not the money.
Yes.
And the more we grow this, and the more that we show that grassroots organizing can work, and if we are the ones that help elect, to help flip these seats from Republicans to Democrats, that gives us leverage going into the next session. Yeah.
Totally different track here. I'm just curious about, so this Dane County Food Action Plan, very specific to Dane County, which is really cool. I'm realizing that I don't know a ton about the food system specifically to Dane County, so I guess my question is twofold. One, what do you think is special about Dane County that needs to be taken into account specifically when thinking about Dane County food? And two, how does Dane County's food system integrate with the wider food systems in Wisconsin?
So I think the food systems work in Dane County can be a template for rural and urban communities to work together and partner. And I think, because outside of Madison, we have many rural communities, and we're showing that whether it's farm to fork work or building places where there's that distribution, production, transportation hub, to have things tested here, I shouldn't say tested, but to build those templates here to then be scaled up or down based on different areas of the state. I think we also have an opportunity in Dane County to show how it doesn't have to be the big county run or government run system that we fund or see as like the main, I'm not explaining this right, but there's in Marathon County, the LFPA is somewhat controversial there because the response during, when ARPA funds ran out, what from the community was to partner with United Way, who then acted as like their administrative hub, to then help farmers get foods to not just pantries, but areas where some folks are not comfortable going to pantries, or so they were able to uh, have it be very community, like almost like a specialized system for that area, because those folks in that community know what they need, right?
Yeah.
Which is why local government programs are sometimes much more efficient than what's run at the state. So how can we support localized programs, and ones that might scale larger than that? I think Dane County has an opportunity to show it and also learn from those other projects, because I think Food Hub or LFP, they're not always resourced. They're not always funded beyond 1 or 2 years. So then not being able to plan for your next budget makes it really difficult to either scale or even be more sustainable. So I think Dane County, we can show how to keep the different micro level food systems, keep those connected, as opposed to just thinking about Dane County as or the state as one larger one. I am very much of the mindset that we should make it easier to get funding and have less reporting requirements, because, and that, like, it scares a lot of people around transparency and accountability, sure, but that flexibility in funding is so necessary because the needs in different communities are very different. And so I would hope that maybe if our public health, our Dane County Public Health or the city is funding pilot programs that can either be replicated in other parts, or, we're showing that we can scale those up or down. With that.
Yeah,
Sure,
that
okay.
absolutely answers
Yeah.
the question. Thank you.
Because when I think about funding too from DACAP or DNR, I think there's people push for the one size fits all because we think that might be more efficient. But I think when we've got these pilot programs that show, when community know that it works, we have to be able to provide funding that doesn't just on things that may not be as quantifiable with the same types of metrics, as we can't have those, like those metrics. How are we judging them based on? The metrics have to change. And I think that Dane County, since it is better, like we have more, honestly, it's more wealth here, right? So how are we distributing that to different programs? And then showing that we can either scale up and those down, or we're learning from another community program. But I always point to that Marathon County one because they're like, we can't track this, like where the product might have gone if that truck didn't go to the right place, and working with Food Hub wasn't always, it wasn't always the best option for some of the farmers out there. They just got United Way funding. They have trusted relationships. They know where the food has to go. They know how to reach immigrant communities. So I think looking at giving more validation to projects like that, bringing that here, or something that looked in Dane County. There, yes.
And it's also, there's a lot of variation within Dane County, right? So like Verona is gonna be very different, than like South Madison. So like zip codes, I did some zip code, research across the state for like emissions. And like the like main part of Madison, or like Madison had one of the best like carbon emissions, but that was because there were so many people in such a small area, so much housing on top of each other. and everybody walked.
That's
So
how
there's-
cities work, yeah, that's
Yeah.
density.
Yes,
Like
there's-
New York is one of the most sustainable places to live, sorry.
No, exactly. Just to say that every area, even within Dane County, there's so much variation that goes into it and like meeting the needs of the people in those areas. They really are the ones who know what they have to do to survive or go outside of the way of like, if they can't, food stamps isn't doing enough, then they're gonna have to find another way. And so they're gonna be the best to know what they need in that environment, but even within a county, you can't do one size fits all, right?
If you give that for a minute.
Yeah,
Right now, I just don't wanna.
yeah, let's
Okay.
do 10 more minutes.
Okay, I just.
I'll try to be
Okay.
this night. Sorry.
Is anyone in a rush? No, players.
I think Planning Food Collective, one of its original like anchors was collective purchasing. And all of the resources, the outreach that we do. My role is always the communication, who should be at this table and how do we get them there? And then it always ends up, ultimately, the thing I think oftentimes will break the system is the necessity for collective purchasing. And the mechanisms around that that don't exist. And so I'm wondering, I think organizing in these capacities is possible. But I think, what does that look like on a political like landscape? How do we take that to a political, like you said, the systems that exist are working, but they're not working for us and they're broken. So how do we build a system that provides opportunity for collective purchasing? And I know that the food systems is struggling. You were talking about it earlier, this exact thing, but like in the industries that we work with, everyone's facing the same thing. And I know you probably know this, our veterinary clinics, everyone of those big corporations are buying them all up. And then they're purchasing and navigating the prescriptions and the equipment needed to care for pets. So that small businesses can't afford them. So we're working locally to try and how we collectively purchase for these said vet clinics. But like that, the method is so hard, it's so clunky and it's so much work. Is there some level of there's above what we're trying to do?
Yeah, I think bulk purchasing, just like there's legislation for bulk purchasing of prescription drugs to help the state bring, like actually be a competitor in the current markets, right? I think that could absolutely happen on a food level as well as a potential grant. As long as there is an administrator.
Yeah.
So that I think that infrastructure is really around because that's also what is lacking in a lot of the smaller organizations is like the admin expenses, both in time and just it's hard to do that work when you're out doing direct services, you're out in the field, when you're working in the restaurant. So having actually, I think a centralized administrative triage in a way where that bulk purchasing and then having the state actually cover some of the staffing requirements there. So that the costs are the overhead cost of this, let's just call it like the co-op.
Yeah. Shared service cooperative.
Yeah, cause that was the thought process during COVID too, right? With like, if all the restaurants could go get our to-go boxes from one big ass warehouse so that somebody could buy them in the pallets and actually lower cost for everyone. I think that could even be an individual either budget line item or we see bills all the time come across the legislature. I don't think they're very efficient, but sometimes that's the thing that could move in a divided legislature or get more bipartisan support. If it is grant funding for bulk purchasing and centralized distribution of insert resource here for food systems. And I think that let's work on that bill.
Yeah.
I mean, the shared administration feels even bigger than bulk purchasing,
Yeah.
because you're talking about all these like local, like movements like coming up, and like when I think of that, like folks wanting to start something, and right, we're currently in this system where it's like nearly like opaque to be able to access grant funding, like, what if there's a grant writer or several, right? Like in that administrative co-op, right? Because I don't have the time or energy to
Yeah.
write these big grants for the things that I imagine could happen. But if I could just like, pay for a share of a grant writer's time or something like that, or, somebody were paid by the state to do that on behalf.
Until I just, try to change everything to just redistribution, this seems like a better
Yeah.
packaging in the legislature and through a bill, because you're absolutely right that it's grant administering, applying for the grant, administering the grant, and then all the reporting share afterwards. And to have that be a shared service, right? Having this, that administrative infrastructure to support the social infrastructure and getting these resources out to folks. I think specific, like having that be through a food system. And maybe then this is later scaled for other direct resources. But yeah, it's going into that collective co-op mindset and tricking people into socialism.
Well, we were talking about it and.
It's the culture we live in, it's the culture of scarcity, and that's designed to elevate prices. And so how can we fight a culture of scarcity? We've gotta almost like make it against the law to throw away good food. And you fight their scarcity by.
A space where we see the abundance.
Yeah, the food cannot, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that we have this idea of like doing this law, which is this food rescue law, that kind of like makes it hard to throw away good food. But I wonder, like, that's a beginning to fight against the scarcity, because why is the housing marketing, like all these empty spaces owned by whoever, like who owns these places, And that's the scarcity as well. So maybe we should have a law that a place cannot be empty for more than a year or 6 months. It has to be rented, like forcing the market to roll. I don't know, I shouldn't be talking like.
New York City, right, where they're like, it's a tax, it's a big tax on folks that like are.
It's new though, it's
Yeah.
just a new thing. I think like it's gotta fight their scarcity that is designing price to up.
We can't be afraid to use punitive measures to bring in, more equity when private equity has not been playing by those rules, right? Whether they're buying like housing stock or they're buying up land and taking up, this growing big ag and encouraging consolidation. We can fight back some of that corporate consolidation, but we can't be afraid to use punitive measures. Right now, it's not just the same to say tax the billionaires and tax the church, those corporations fall under that. And I think, as much as I don't want to, you can't bring a knife to a firefight. I'm not trying to get militaristic here, but I do want folks to think about that punitive measures to bring kind of discourage, change some of them for bits, because right now it's harder to apply for food share than it is to get a massive corporate subsidy through it does. They're very top of mind for me right now, but and maybe that's not even, we shouldn't even consider that limited, but it's leveling the playing field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do one last question and then we'll wrap up. That's okay. If anyone has it.
We just came up with this one.
Yeah.
Because I'm always thinking about like, how do we lower admin costs? We have people who do, Center for Community Stewardship, folks who are like helping folks get fiscal sponsors for their nonprofits. We have many nonprofits, but anyway, like if we have centralized resources, especially on the I consider admin costs to be overhead costs. We think about this as a business.
And I think that food systems will always be, everything's considered an add-on. Like there is just, any other business builds out their budget with all these things in mind. Food has to prioritize these things and everything else is an add-on, like taking care of our staff, that's an add-on. quality food, that's an add-on, it becomes, everything becomes, sorry.
I also think
Can
this
you-
is a good gateway to public grocery stores.
Can you talk about, just like worker justice movements going on throughout the state, how we can tap into that, how we can build on those movements? Because basically, like, for the food plan, it's like everything related to how we build a sustainable career
Yeah.
is so much bigger than the individual
Yes.
business, and obviously you understand that.
I mean, Worker Justice Wisconsin, they're actually not just in helping a lot of immigrant workers with unionizing, but actually now building co-ops. So WC, Worker Justice Coalition. They have, I'm gonna make sure I get you, but they're based here in Madison. They are help with taking on wage theft. Took that all the way to the Attorney General. So Worker Justice Wisconsin, WJW. There is multiple campaigns and actually support from Farm Bureau for driver's licenses for all. That's huge for workers. I think with the Democratic majority, it has a real shot. And then I think beyond organizing and their beyond part of the labor movement has to be figuring out ways to build small business and worker coalition. You know, historically, workers and small businesses were acting in coalition to take on corporations and conglomerates. And so I think Main Street Alliance fighting for policies like universal childcare, I don't know if it's universal childcare, but childcare and paid leave and the public option are ways that we can bring in that advocacy that from both small business and worker perspectives and experiences.
And I would, if I can just add on to the Worker Justice Wisconsin, they were a reactionary nonprofit. People came to them when they had been injured and they had no resources, or they didn't speak English and they didn't know how they were getting paid. And it became, they did what you guys are talking about doing, they flipped the script and started going to where they knew their people were going to be, which was churches and grocery stores and libraries, and they started.
Construction sites.
Yeah, they started, I would say evangelizing, for lack of a better word, about, and they became proactive about it. So they now are able to offer resources on the front end rather than reacting to everything on the back end, which I think is kind of what we're trying to do as a food system, is try to build out the foreshadowing and where we're headed versus reacting. They're amazing. They hold all the know your rights stuff too. You're creating the know your rights stuff.
Is it urban triage ag program, Alex? What about that? Oh, just in terms of where folks can support.
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, if people haven't heard of Urban Triage, urbantriage.org, our whole ag program is kind of grounded and founded in the idea of multi-generational farming. So all of our programming, from supporting healthy Black families, supporting healthy Black elders, is really about getting, you know, grandparents and parents and kids out on the farm together and figuring out how to not only grow food out at shared land access plots, but also within their home gardens and apartment gardens. So, yeah, if you're really into community, you know, grassroots, not only organizing, but figuring out how to feed ourselves, then check us out, please. We've got a lot of volunteer options and programming options, so.
And Urban Triage will be the feature for next month's DCFC.
Yeah, yep.
Cool, so come out next month, first Tuesday of the month,
Thanks, Noah. I forgot about that.
and we'll wrap it up there. Can we give Fran a round of applause in our. Thanks for staying late, everybody. You know, they'll kick us out when it's time to go, so feel free to stick around and have conversations. That's what it's all about. And thank you all for coming out.
Thank you, Noah. I am, but I don't have any with me. Don't tell my campaign team that I didn't bring them. Noah's got all my information. If you have questions on the legislative side, that's just the rep.hong email. There are other things that you weren't able to ask. My email is just fran@francescahong.com. For more organizing, got other campaigns going on, 20 for 26, $20 minimum wage, living wage. coalition. Happy to get folks connected, but the individual campaigns around with our justice, and you all are the experts on food systems. But other projects that are going around the state, I can help be a pollinator in any way.
Yeah, you mentioned, sorry to interrupt, but you mentioned that I talk a lot sometimes, I'm so sorry. You mentioned that we try to flip, right, the house and all that stuff. How can we actually do that? Do we have a plan? Like you said that you could. Yeah, like.
That's who are announcing in the assembly, I think are targeting 12 districts. And then we also have to make sure the incumbents that are in the purple district, Democrats that have a lot of Republicans and Democrats in their district, we have to make sure they come back. But if you follow the Assembly Democrats campaign committee, if you Google Assembly Democrats, and can't believe I'm vouching for them right now, but they are where, and I think it's most important to focus actually on the assembly. As a state rep, it's the people's house, it's the better chamber. But I'll give you the areas and then we'll have soon which districts, but like Dane County having majority Democratic reps. It's really important that we get to other parts of the state and do things like help knock doors, and those canvases will be available, most of them through like Democratic county parties. We can raise money for those candidates because we're talking about, and this is so gross, but some of these state assembly races are gonna be upwards of $5-6 million. And what will be Republican ads and then Dem ads and so the plan is to fight on the ground with canvassing and holding big events and making sure these candidates are getting their message out to folks. And right now, everyone's talking about affordability out of their everything. But helping those 12 districts and the Democratic candidates in those districts so that we can get at least 5 more seats. And we're growing our campaign, and we want to grow and strengthen organizing apparatus. So people who are interested in my gubernatorial campaign, that we give them skills and resources to organize in their area. Because the biggest, I think, beyond just texting people and canvassing, all very important, is we need new people who have never been involved in a political campaign, are somewhat apathetic, or don't think anything can change. People in this room can have a conversation with someone like that in their life that I cannot, that I won't be able to convince because I'm a terrible politician. But the more people who aren't or haven't ever been engaged, that we can tell them, look, you vote for the Democrat in Sheboygan, we get 5 more Democrats in the assembly, we're gonna legalize weed. If we get 5 more Democrats in the assembly, we're gonna raise the minimum wage. The Democrats, I'm making sure that for next session, we're going in with a plan to check things off like a chef's prep list, like they did in Minnesota.
Healthy school meals for all.
Healthy school meals for all, increase minimum wage, repeal Act 10, legalize weed.
Food rescue law.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap us up because we're over quite a bit. Thanks to the folks online for joining. Thanks to everyone for coming out. If we can do 2 things, can we take a picture for people in person? And then Fran asked if you want to put your name, your organization you're affiliated with, and a contact here. I'll share it with Fran.
I'm not gonna spam you with stuff. I want to keep track of the different programs and work that's happening right now.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.